The courtroom froze the moment the nurse placed her trembling hand over her badge. "I did everything I could to save her," she whispered, voice cracking like thin glass. Judge Judy's eyes lifted, sharp at first, then softening as the nurse's story unfurled, raw, unfiltered, painfully human. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. But when the nurse revealed why she was being sued, Judge Judy leaned back, and for the first time all morning, she paused. "But before we get into it, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and hit subscribe for more shocking courtroom moments." The daughter's voice slices through the courtroom before the nurse can breathe. "She ruined my life," she snaps, stepping forward as if the ground itself offended her. Judge Judy lifts one eyebrow, the kind that warns an emotional storm is coming. The camera sweeps across the room, catching the tension tightening like a drawn wire. The nurse, still seated, clutches her badge as though it keeps her from unraveling. Her eyes flicker with exhaustion, not from fear, but from the weight of reliving something she has avoided for months. The plaintiff, a woman in her late 20s, stands tall but brittle. Her arms are crossed so tightly they look painful, and her chin juts forward with a brittle confidence that cracks at the edges. You can see grief in her posture, but weaponized, sharpened into accusation. "She withheld information," the plaintiff says, pacing with restless fury. "My mother died confused, scared, alone. Because she didn't tell me the truth, she kept me from saying goodbye." A wave of murmurs ripples across the gallery. The nurse inhales sharply, but says nothing. Judge Judy's gaze snaps to the nurse like a spotlight. "Is that true?" Her voice is calm, but edged, a surgical question meant to expose lies or reveal pain. The nurse shakes her head, barely. The motion is small, trembling. "It's more complicated." "That's not an answer," the judge replies, leaning forward. "She's accusing you of negligence, emotional negligence, the kind that can damage a family forever." The nurse's chin quivers, but she doesn't lift her eyes. Her silence isn't defensive, it's protective, as though she's afraid that speaking will make everything worse. The plaintiff steps closer, her words jagged. "She didn't just stay quiet. She chose to stay quiet. My mother spent her last moments terrified, and she let that happen." Judy holds up a hand, commanding the room back into stillness. "Before I decide whether this has any legal legs, we need clarity. Nurse Williams?" The camera moves in close, capturing the tremble of her hands, the way she grips the edge of the podium like a lifeline. "Why didn't you tell her daughter what was happening?" The nurse finally lifts her eyes. They're wet, glossy, but filled with something deeper than sadness, a kind of haunted resolve. She opens her mouth, but a soft breath escapes instead of words. "I can't start with that," she whispers, "not without telling you about her mother first." A stunned silence presses into the room. Even the plaintiff pauses mid-breath. Judy narrows her eyes. "What about her mother?" The nurse swallows. Her voice, when it emerges, is fragile but steady. She didn't die alone, and she didn't die afraid." The plaintiff flinches, as if struck. The nurse continues, barely audible. "I was the one holding her hand." And then she adds, breath hitching, "But that's not why I'm here today. There's something you all need to know about her final moments." "I was the one holding her hand," the nurse says, and the room sharpens, every breath pulled taut. Judge Judy leans in, not out of skepticism, but because something in the nurse's tone sounds like a dam about to break. The plaintiff's arms slowly drop from their defensive fold. The camera cuts to a close-up of the nurse's trembling fingers, the badges rattling softly like wind chimes in a storm. When she speaks again, her voice is barely more than a breath. "She didn't die alone. She didn't fade into nothing without someone there." Each word seems to cost her something. A hush washes across the courtroom. Even the air feels still. Judge Judy softens her posture just slightly, an almost imperceptible shift, but one that says she's listening with more than authority now. "Tell me exactly what you mean," she instructs, her tone warm but firm. The nurse inhales shakily. "When I walked into her room that night, She was trying to sit up. She was frightened, in pain, calling for her daughter. The plaintiff stiffens. Her eyes flicker with something raw, guilt or grief or both, but she says nothing. I told her I would stay, the nurse continues. She gripped my wrist so tight it left marks. She asked me not to leave her, and I didn't. The camera pans slowly toward the audience. Wide eyes, parted lips, hands covering hearts. The emotional shift is palpable. And she calmed, the nurse says, her voice softening into memory. Her breathing slowed. She asked me if her daughter was on the way. The plaintiff swallows, hard. Judge Judy interjects gently. And what did you tell her? I told her what I believed at the time, that she would come when she could. The nurse's voice cracks on the last word. The plaintiff snaps, You lied to her? But Judy silences her with a raised hand. Let her finish. The nurse wipes her eyes. She wasn't afraid of dying. What frightened her was the thought that her daughter might still be angry. She talked about the fight they had, how she wished she could undo it. A small gasp escapes the daughter's throat, barely audible, but unmistakably hers. The nurse hesitates, gathering herself before revealing the part she's been avoiding. She asked me to tell her daughter something. Her last words were not about fear. They were about love. Judy leans forward, elbows on the bench. What did she say? The nurse's eyes shimmer. She said, Tell her I forgive her. Tell her I love her. Tell her I know she's trying. The plaintiff's face crumples, a fracture spreading through all her practiced anger. The nurse looks down, almost ashamed. I didn't tell her. I didn't think she'd want to hear it. Not then. A wave of shock ripples across the courtroom. Judy's voice cuts like a wire snapping. Why would you decide what a daughter deserved to hear from her dying mother? The plaintiff's breath catches, the kind of sharp inhale that betrays recognition before denial can form. Judge Judy notices it instantly, her gaze slicing toward the daughter like a spotlight. The nurse stands motionless, as though speaking any further might shatter the fragile truth hanging between them. The courtroom feels smaller now, the air thicker. Even the cameras seem to hover closer, lenses drawn toward the emotional gravity pulling the room inward. Judy's tone drops to a sharper register. Why would you withhold a dying woman's message to her child? The nurse flinches. Because I didn't think she wanted to hear it. The plaintiff's jaw locks. You don't get to decide what I want. Her voice cracks louder than intended, the words boomeranging back toward her in an echo of desperation. A single tear escapes down her cheek, but she wipes it away like it's evidence. The nurse finally lifts her eyes, soft, exhausted, pleading to be understood. She told me she didn't want to burden you. She was afraid you'd think she was manipulating you with guilt. She was worried about your heart even as hers was failing. The daughter's composure splinters. Her shoulders collapse inward as if struck. The nurse continues, stepping deeper into memory. She said she knew you were hurting, that she knew the fight between you wasn't who you really are. She asked me to tell you she was proud of you, even if things were messy. The plaintiff whispers, Stop. Please, stop. But the words are too fragile to command anything. A ripple of emotion sweeps through the audience. Arms fold tighter, throats are swallowed dry, a few hands reach for tissues. Judy observes the plaintiff with a measured look, a judge's scrutiny softened with human understanding. Your mother wasn't angry with you, Judy says quietly. She was worried you'd never forgive yourself. The daughter shuts her eyes, shaking her head. This isn't fair. But the protest carries no conviction, only a raw ache. The nurse takes a breath, steadying herself. I thought, if I told her right then she would have pushed everyone away even harder. She was furious at the world, at the hospital, at herself. Don't psychoanalyze me, the plaintiff snaps, but her voice trembles, betraying she already knows the truth of it. Judy interjects gently, though her stare is unwavering. What were you really avoiding when your mother needed you? The plaintiff's eyes dart away. The room shifts, a collective realization settling like dust on a still surface. Something has been hiding beneath her anger from the very beginning. The nurse's voice softens to a whisper. I didn't share the message because I didn't want to break her heart on the last night of her life. The plaintiff looks up sharply, pain, guilt, fury, and longing flickering all at once. Judy leans back, fingers steepled. That still doesn't explain why you assumed she wouldn't want the truth. The nurse inhales deeply, voice trembling as she admits. Because she wasn't angry at her mother. She was angry at herself. The nurse closes her eyes as though bracing for impact. When she opens them again, they glisten with a truth she's held for far too long. She didn't want to hear the message, she whispers, and the daughter's face drains of color. A hush rolls through the courtroom like a slow-moving storm. Even Judge Judy stills, sensing the emotional terrain about to shift under everyone's feet. The nurse steps forward, fingers twisting together, voice trembling but firm enough to hold. She didn't want to hear it because she wasn't ready. At that time, she didn't want forgiveness. She wanted distance. The plaintiff flinches visibly, but refuses to look away. Her breathing grows uneven, like someone trying to stand against a wind they caused themselves. The nurse continues carefully, each word weighted with memory. I saw her earlier that day. She was upset, not a little upset, but completely overwhelmed. She was shouting at staff, pacing the hallway, saying she couldn't take it anymore. She refused to go into the room. The daughter's lips part, but no words come. She told us, the nurse continues, that she didn't want to see her mother until she'd calmed down. She said she didn't want another fight. She said she needed space. Judge Judy leans forward. Is this true? She asks the daughter. The plaintiff blinks hard, jaw tightening, but no denial comes. The nurse swallows. When I went into the room later, your mother wasn't angry. She was heartbroken. She blamed herself for the argument. She kept saying, I pushed her too hard, I said the wrong things. The daughter's face twists. Grief, shame, resentment, all fighting for space. I stayed because she didn't want to die alone. The nurse continues softly. But I kept the message to myself because she wasn't ready to hear love. She was drowning in guilt. Giving her that message that night would have felt like twisting the knife. But that's my choice, the plaintiff cries out, a raw, jagged sound slicing the air. You don't get to decide when I'm ready to hear my own mother's last words. Judy raises her hand sharply. Sit and breathe. The daughter sinks down, shaking, eyes flashing with a desperate mixture of self-defense and self-recognition. Judy turns back to the nurse. You believed you were sparing her? The nurse nods. Yes. I thought I was protecting her from breaking. I've seen people shattered by final words they weren't ready for. Judy's eyes narrow slightly. But you're still avoiding something. What exactly were they arguing about that would make her so unwilling to face her mother? The daughter stiffens, a tiny involuntary movement that Judy catches instantly. The judge's voice drops to a razor's whisper. What was the fight really about? The daughter stares forward, color draining from her cheeks. The nurse slowly turns toward her. You never told her, did you? She murmurs. And the daughter's eyes fill with the kind of fear that only truth can summon. Judge Judy's question hangs in the air like smoke from a gunshot. The daughter's lips tremble, not with anger this time, but with something far more fragile. Were you afraid of what she'd say if she lived? Judy asks quietly. And the daughter breaks. The courtroom shifts, the emotional temperature plunging. The plaintiff grips the edge of her podium as though it's the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes glisten, her breaths sharp and uneven. I didn't, she begins, but the words collapse. She covers her mouth, shoulders quivering. The nurse watches her, not with vindication, but with a heavy sadness. She knows this trembling. She's seen it before. The moment guilt cracks through anger, like light through fractured glass. Judge Judy's voice cuts through the silence, calm but unyielding. Tell the truth. What were you really avoiding that night? A single tear escapes down the plaintiff's cheek. She found out, she whispers. Found out what? Judy presses. The daughter shuts her eyes, agony contorting her expression. The money, the missing money from her account. She confronted me over the phone. I panicked. A ripple of shocked murmurs ripples across the gallery. The daughter forces herself to continue. I borrowed it. I meant to pay it back. I just needed time. But she didn't believe me. She thought I was taking advantage of her. The weight of the confession seems to crush her. She sinks slightly as though her skeleton can no longer hold the burden she's carried alone. The nurse speaks softly, carefully. She wasn't angry about the money. She was hurt because she thought she'd failed you. She told me she pushed too hard, that she didn't listen enough. The daughter shakes her head violently. No, no. But her denial collapses into a sob. She said she was disappointed. She said she didn't know who I was anymore. Judy watches her with a mixture of sternness and deep empathy. And that's why you didn't go into the room? The daughter nods, tears spilling freely now. I couldn't face her. I couldn't take one more word. I thought she'd tell me I'd ruined everything. I thought, her breath hitches painfully. I thought I still had time. The nurse steps forward just half an inch, a gesture so small, yet somehow overwhelmingly human. She didn't want to fight. She wanted to understand you. She wanted to say she loved you. The daughter sobs harder, fingers pressing into her eyes. Why didn't you tell me that sooner? Why didn't you tell me right away? The nurse takes a deep breath. Because I didn't think you could carry it yet. I thought you needed gentler timing, a safer moment. Judy shakes her head slowly. Good intentions don't erase consequences. The daughter's sobbing softens, turning into a painful, rhythmic breathing as she gathers the courage to lift her face again. I filed this lawsuit, she says brokenly, because I needed someone else to blame. I couldn't stand the weight of knowing the last thing my mother heard from me was anger. The room holds its breath. But, the daughter continues, voice thinning to a whisper, the nurse isn't the only one who kept something from me. She wipes her tears, then looks up at the nurse with a stunned, almost frightened clarity. My mother left a message, didn't she? She asks. A written one. The nurse reaches into her pocket with a trembling hand. A single folded sheet of paper emerges, soft at the edges, worn from being held too many times. The daughter gasps, recognizing the handwriting before the paper even opens. The courtroom falls into a reverent silence, the kind reserved for sacred things or devastating truths. Judge Judy's eyes narrow, not in suspicion, but in concentration, as though the air itself has thickened around the letter. Judy motions. Bring it forward. The nurse steps toward the bench, each footfall measured, hesitant. She lays the letter down gently, as if placing something fragile enough to bruise under a breath. Judy unfolds it. The soft crackle of paper sounds impossibly loud in the quiet courtroom. Do you want me to read this aloud? She asks. Or would you prefer to read it privately? The plaintiff's voice falters. Read it. A moment passes. Please. Judy nods and looks down. The camera cuts to a tight shot of the letter, handwriting slanted, delicate, trembling at the ends of each line. Judy begins. My sweet girl, I forgive you. Not because you asked me to, but because I never stopped loving you. I know you're hurting. I know you're scared. I wish I'd told you sooner that none of what you're carrying, changes who you are in my heart. The daughter brings both hands to her mouth. Her legs wobble. A soft sob escapes. Judy continues, her voice steady but touched by something rarely heard, restrained sorrow. You're doing your best, even when you feel lost. I see you. I always have. If I don't get another chance to say it, know this. I forgive you, and I hope you'll forgive yourself. A collective exhale sweeps the gallery like a single body releasing tension. The daughter's shoulders crumble inward, her knees bending as though the words physically push her downward. The nurse instinctively reaches out a hand but stops, not wanting to intrude. Judy finishes the letter softly. Love, Mom. Silence follows, not empty, but full. Thick, weighted. The daughter's voice trembles through her tears. She forgave me, and I never even apologized. The nurse's voice is barely audible. She didn't want to leave you carrying her pain. No, the daughter whispers, shaking her head. No, this isn't fair. Why would you hold this back from me? Why would you keep her last words for yourself? The nurse steadies herself. Because she asked me to wait. She wrote this when she was scared you wouldn't be able to hear it yet. She didn't want her last moments to be a burden on you. The daughter stares at her, eyes wide, not angry, but broken. You should have told me anyway, Judy interjects slowly, her tone grounding the room. That's the question we're all facing now. Not whether the letter existed, but whether withholding it caused damage. The daughter swallows hard. Is that everything? Is that all she said? The nurse hesitates. The kind of hesitation that makes the entire courtroom lean forward. No, she whispers. There's something else she asked me to tell you. The daughter's breath catches. What else? She demands, voice shaking. Tell me in the comments. Do you think the nurse should have delivered the message sooner? The nurse clasps her hands together as though trying to steady the weight of what she's about to reveal. She didn't want to die angry, she says softly, and the room goes still. The daughter looks up, hope and dread warring in her eyes. A hush falls over the courtroom, thick and almost sacred. The judge shifts slightly, the leather of her chair creaking, a small sound in a room suspended in breath. The nurse swallows. Your mother. She told me something she didn't want documented. She said it quietly, almost like she was confessing. She didn't want anyone to be blamed for her fear or for her heart giving out. The daughter's eyebrows knit, tears still clinging to her lashes. Blamed? For what? The nurse takes a slow breath. She told me she planned to report you. The daughter goes rigid, a statue carved by shock. The audience murmurs, even the bailiff's stoic expression shifts. She wanted to talk to the social worker about the missing money, the nurse continues, but when she calmed down, when she realized how much you were struggling, she changed her mind. The daughter's arms fold around herself as though trying to hold her own fragments together. She was going to turn me in? Her voice cracks, wounded, disbelieving. No, the nurse says gently. She was scared, hurt, but she wasn't angry with you. She was angry with herself for pushing you into a corner. The nurse pauses, her eyes softening. She told me she thought she had failed you as a mother. The plaintiff covers her mouth as a sound escapes, part sob, part apology no one has asked for yet. Judge Judy studies her with a long, silent look, the kind that reads through flesh and bone. And she made you promise not to report it? Judy asks the nurse. The nurse nods. Yes. She asked me to protect her daughter from consequences she believed were born out of desperation, not malice. The daughter cries openly now, shoulders shaking with each trembling breath. Why wouldn't she tell me that herself? She didn't want her last words to you to be about mistakes, the nurse answers. She wanted them to be about love, about forgiveness. The daughter sobs harder, almost doubling over. The nurse continues, her voice barely above a whisper. She told me she wished she'd held you closer instead of holding you responsible. She said she hoped you'd find your way back to yourself. Judge Judy's expression shifts, not soft exactly, but deeply human. The courtroom feels less like a battleground and more like a confessional. Still, there's a thread of tension lingering, a quiet question waiting to be pulled. The daughter finally looks up, her voice trembling. Then why am I just hearing this now? Why didn't you tell me? The nurse hesitates, not out of fear, but because she knows what comes next will hurt. Because, the nurse says, she warned me you weren't alone in your decision to sue. Someone encouraged you, someone who wasn't thinking of your mother at all. Judge Judy's eyebrows lift, the first ripple of suspicion forming. The daughter blinks, startled. She turns her head slowly toward the gallery. Her eyes land on a figure trying very hard not to be seen. The nurse whispers, "He's the reason she was afraid." A figure shifts in the gallery, subtle, But guilt has a way of glowing under fluorescent lights. Judge Judy notices instantly. "Sir," she says, voice sharp as a blade. "Why are you avoiding eye contact?" The man freezes, shoulders tightening beneath a stiff hospital administrator badge clipped too neatly to his pocket. His attempt at composure fails under Judy's unblinking stare. The daughter looks between him and the nurse with growing anxiety, as though pieces of a puzzle she didn't know she was solving are snapping violently into place. The nurse exhales shakily. "He's the reason she felt afraid." Judy leans forward. "Step up to the podium." The man rises slowly, reluctant, calculating each step like someone trying not to trigger a landmine he buried himself. The daughter's voice cracks. Why would he be involved?" Judy lifts a hand. "We're about to find out." The administrator clears his throat, attempting a polished professionalism that evaporates under the weight of the room's attention. "Your Honor, this entire case has become unnecessarily dramatized. The hospital simply wanted clarity." The nurse lets out a humorless laugh, soft but soaked in bitterness. "Clarity? You pressured me for months after her death. You asked me to remember events differently. You called me into meetings with lawyers before the family even processed what happened." A murmur ripples through the audience. Judy's gaze snaps to him. "Is this true?" He hesitates. Fatal mistake. "We have protocols." Judy slams her palm onto the bench. "I didn't ask about protocols. I asked if you tried to influence her statement." The daughter looks nauseous. "You told me the hospital believed she mishandled my mother's care. You told me a lawsuit would reveal the truth. You said it was the only way my mother's suffering would be acknowledged." He straightens his tie, sweat beading at his temple. "The hospital was concerned about liability if—" Judy cuts him off like a scalpel. "Ah, there it is." The nurse steps forward, eyes burning with long, suppressed emotion. "He wanted the blame off the staffing shortage, off the fact that our floor was so overwhelmed that I was covering 3 critical patients at once. He needed a scapegoat." The administrator snaps. "That's enough." "No," Judy interrupts. "You don't get to silence her in my courtroom." The daughter's expression crumbles, betrayal slicing deeper than grief. "You used me." Her voice trembles, but her anger sharpens. "You fed every fear I had, every insecurity. You told me she died because the nurse didn't care. You told me the hospital had proof." He opens his mouth to respond, but nothing comes. The nurse's voice softens, almost pitying. "Your mother wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of being forgotten. And you turned that fear into ammunition." Judy folds her hands, expression colder than stone. "Sir, I strongly suggest you stop talking." Then, to the nurse. "Why did he need you out of the way?" The nurse hesitates, glancing down, shame flickering. The administrator smirks, sensing an escape. "Go on," Judy orders. "Say it." The nurse whispers, "Because of why I was really in the room that night." A hush sweeps the courtroom. The administrator tilts his head, voice slick with insinuation. "Tell them, Nurse Williams, why you stayed past your shift." The nurse's breath catches, not in fear, but in dread. The daughter stares at her, wide-eyed. What is he talking about? The administrator steps forward, lips curling into a thin, triumphant smirk. "Tell them why you stayed past your shift," he says, dripping insinuation like poison into water. The room freezes, breath held, eyes locked on the nurse. The nurse recoils as though struck, not physically, but emotionally, viscerally, like the accusation has reached straight into her ribcage. Judge Judy's eyes narrow to razor slits. "What exactly are you implying?" The administrator straightens his jacket, savoring the moment. "Only that Nurse Williams' presence in the room wasn't professional." He lets the word linger, inviting suspicion to bloom. "She remained long after her scheduled hours. The hospital logs confirm it." A wave of murmurs spreads through the gallery, quick and sharp. The nurse shakes her head violently. "That's not true. That's not what happened." But the administrator continues, voice oiled with confidence. "And there's more. She entered the patient's room earlier than any official record shows, earlier than she admitted." The daughter jerks in her seat, confusion clouding her expression. What? Why would she? The administrator cuts her off with a smug tilt of the chin. Ask her. Judge Judy pivots her gaze to the nurse, leveling a silence so heavy even the air around them seems to bow beneath it. Did you enter the room earlier than your charted time? Yes or no? The nurse opens her mouth, but no sound comes out. Her throat tightens, her breathing shakes, not from guilt, from fear. The daughter's voice rises, trembling. Why aren't you answering? What were you doing in my mother's room? The nurse's eyes brim with panic, a trapped animal look, cornered by lies twisted from kernels of truth. I went in because she needed. The administrator interjects sharply. Did she need you, or did you insert yourself where you had no business being? Judge Judy slams her gavel once, the crack echoing like a gunshot. Enough! The courtroom stills instantly. Judy leans forward, her stare slicing into the administrator. You brought up more evidence. Produce it. The administrator's smile sharpens. Gladly. He lifts a tablet from his briefcase, thin, black, ominous, and taps the screen. We reviewed the security footage. A murmur ripples through the audience again. Footage, the daughter repeats, eyes widening. The administrator nods. Footage that shows someone entering the patient's room at a time that, shall we say, contradicts the nurse's statement. He turns the device toward Judge Judy. Her expression shifts, not shock, but something colder. Calculating. She looks at the nurse. Is there something you need to tell this court before we watch it? The nurse trembles. Her lips part. A whisper escapes. It's not what he thinks. Then what is it? The daughter cries. Why were you there early? Silence. A silence so deep it seems to bend the air. And then, from the back of the room, someone lets out a small gasp. The kind that means understanding has arrived early. Judge Judy raises a brow. Roll the footage. As the screen brightens and the grainy video begins to play, the daughter rises slowly, eyes widening with shock. I know that figure, she whispers. The courtroom lights dim as the monitor flickers to life, casting a cold blue glow across every tense face. A grainy hallway appears, timestamp blinking like a heartbeat. The daughter leans forward, eyes narrowing with recognition she's trying to deny. The video begins with the empty corridor outside the patient's room. Footsteps echo faintly through the speakers, sharp, hurried. A dark, indistinct figure appears at the edge of the frame. The administrator crosses his arms, wearing a predator's smile. As you can see, someone entered the patient's room at 7:42 p.m. This is earlier than Nurse Williams documented. Judy watches, her expression unreadable. She's seen enough courtroom theatrics to know when something smells off, and this footage reeks of selective truth. The nurse stands rigid, palms sweating, breath shallow. That's not me. The administrator pounces. Really? Then who is it? Because it certainly isn't one of our doctors or technicians. The daughter's hand lifts to her mouth. Her voice comes out thin and trembling. Wait. The height. The hair. She steps closer to the monitor. That's not the nurse. The administrator blinks, thrown off. Excuse me? That's not her, the daughter repeats, stronger now, pointing at the silhouette. She's shorter, and her hair is tied back every shift. This person has loose hair. The nurse releases a shaky breath, relief trembling through her features. But Judy raises a hand. Let's not jump ahead. Keep watching. The figure moves closer to the door, but the camera catches only the back, a familiar curve of the shoulder, a tremor in the hands as they grip the doorknob. Something deeply human, something deeply emotional. The daughter's knees nearly buckle. Oh my God. The judge turns to her. Do you recognize the person in this footage? The daughter nods slowly, the truth flooding her face until denial has no room left to hide. It's me. A stunned wave sweeps through the gallery. The administrator's confidence evaporates. What? No, that can't be. It's me, the daughter repeats, louder now. I went to see her before the fight, before everything spiraled. Judge Judy's gaze sharpens like a blade. Are you telling this court that you were in your mother's room earlier than documented? Not the nurse? The daughter wipes tears from her cheeks. Yes, I didn't want anyone to know. I was angry. I said awful things. I stormed out and told myself I'd come back later, when I'd calmed down. The nurse closes her eyes, the memory flooding back with agonizing clarity. I saw your mother shortly after that. She was crying, not because she was dying, but because she thought she'd lost you. The daughter breaks. The sound isn't loud. It's quiet, crushed, devastating. The administrator sputters. This doesn't change the fact that— Sit down, Judy commands, before you embarrass yourself further. Her attention returns to the nurse. You didn't misreport your time. You didn't misrepresent your role. The footage was being used to twist the truth, not reveal it. The nurse nods, tears slipping silently down her face. Judy turns slowly toward the daughter. You said you visited her earlier. Why didn't you tell anyone? And the daughter's answer, trembling on her lips, threatens to reshape everything. The daughter rises slowly, every movement trembling with the weight of a truth she's run from for months. Judge Judy watches her with a stillness so precise it borders on surgical. I need to tell the truth, the daughter whispers, and the entire courtroom leans in. The gallery quiets, absorbing the gravity in the daughter's voice. She steps closer to the monitor, as if drawn to the ghost of her own silhouette. That figure. That was me, she repeats, louder this time, the words shaking the foundation of everything she claimed until now. Judge Judy narrows her eyes with measured intensity. Explain. The daughter inhales shakily. I visited my mother before the argument, before I told everyone I wasn't speaking to her. I went in there angry, furious, because she'd confronted me about the missing money. Her voice catches, breaking like thin ice under pressure. I thought if I confronted her first, I could explain, tell my side, tell her why I needed it, but she looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Her lips tremble. So I snapped. I said things I can't take back. The nurse closes her eyes, swallowing hard. She remembers the aftermath, the sobbing, the regret. The daughter wipes her nose, continuing through tears. I stormed out. I told myself I'd return in 10 minutes. I just needed air, space, anything. But then staff got involved. People asked if I was okay. I panicked. And I lied. I said I hadn't been in yet. And that lie, Judy interjects, became the foundation of this lawsuit. The daughter nods, shame staining her voice. I thought if I admitted I'd been there, people would blame me. I blamed myself. Judy's eyes darken with a depth of understanding and disappointment. So instead, you blamed the nurse. The daughter breaks into guttural sobs. I didn't want to, I swear, but he— She turns toward the administrator, finger trembling, voice splitting with betrayal. He told me she was negligent, that she could have saved her, that the hospital knew she mishandled the situation. The administrator stiffens but says nothing. His silence screams guilt. The nurse steps forward, voice quiet but steady. Your mother didn't blame you. She looks at the daughter as though offering her a lifeline. All she wanted was for you to forgive yourself. The daughter's breath shudders. But you knew I had been there that night, didn't you? She turns to the nurse. You knew I went into that room. The nurse looks down, guilt coursing through her posture. I suspected. Your mother kept saying she lost you twice that night. I knew something had happened before the official timeline. Judy's gaze sharpens. Why didn't you say anything? The nurse hesitates, the hesitation of someone carrying a wound far older than the current case. Because, the nurse whispers, it wasn't my place to expose her pain. She pauses. And because I know what it feels like to walk away from someone you love in their final hours. The courtroom stills as her admission sinks in. Judy leans back slowly. You knew, because you lived it. The nurse's eyes shine with a devastating truth. The nurse whispers, voice fracturing. I failed my own mother once. I couldn't let another daughter carry that same burden. The nurse stands very still. Too still. Her hands, always so steady in the courtroom until now, tremble like leaves in a storm. "I've made this mistake before," she says quietly, and the room tightens around her confession. Judge Judy leans forward, her expression shifting from scrutiny to something gentler, more dangerous. Compassion wrapped around steel. "Go on," she says, voice low. "Tell us what mistake you mean." The nurse swallows, grounding herself on the wooden podium as if it were the last solid thing in her world. "My mother," she begins, a shaky exhale carrying her back in time. "She called me the night she died." The daughter's sobs soften into attentive silence. Even the administrator, self-righteous, indignant moments ago, stills. The nurse continues, each word painful, deliberate. "We had argued earlier that day. She said she needed help. I told her I couldn't come. I told her I was tired of being the only one she depended on." She stops, breath quivering. "And she begged me to stay on the phone." The courtroom listens as if the walls themselves lean closer. "But I hung up." A single tear falls. "I hung up because I was overwhelmed, because I thought I'd call her back after I cooled down, because I thought she had more time." Her voice cracks. "I didn't know that would be the last thing I'd ever say to her." The daughter covers her mouth, devastated not just for the nurse, but with the recognition of her own reflection in that story. The nurse presses on, voice soft, trembling but resolute. "When the hospital called me the next morning, they said she'd died alone. No one there, no one holding her hand, no one to tell her she was loved." She forces herself to meet Judy's eyes. "I've carried that guilt every day since. It sits on my chest like a stone I can't put down." Judy nods slowly, her gaze steady. "And you saw this daughter, living the same fear?" The nurse nods. "Yes. The moment her mother said she wanted forgiveness, I heard my own mother's voice, begging, hoping. And I thought," she wipes her cheek, "I thought maybe I could help this daughter avoid the regret I drowned in." The daughter steps closer, voice quivering. "You were trying to protect me." The nurse nods, pain tightening her throat. "I wasn't trying to hide the truth from you. I was trying to spare you from hearing it at the worst moment of your life. I thought giving you time meant giving you a chance to heal before facing the pain." Judy exhales, a slow, deliberate breath. "Intentions don't erase consequences," she says softly. "But they matter. They always matter." The nurse bows her head. "I know withholding the letter and the message complicates everything legally, but emotionally, I did it because I couldn't bear watching another daughter learn the truth too late, the way I did." The daughter's tears fall freely, but something shifts in her, a trembling empathy overtaking her anger. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispers. The nurse's answer breaks gently into the space between them. "Because I didn't want your mother's last words to become your life's greatest wound." Judge Judy rests her hands on the bench, eyes glistening with stern empathy. "Compassion is powerful," she says quietly, "but now we must determine. Was the nurse's silence mercy or misconduct?" The emotional storm still hangs in the air, but the room feels different now, heavier but clearer. Judge Judy straightens her papers, returning to the posture of a judge rather than a witness to grief. "It's time," she says, "to separate heartbreak from responsibility." A subtle shift moves through the courtroom, as if the walls themselves inhale, preparing for the next phase. The daughter wipes her cheeks, standing a little straighter, though her hands still tremble. The nurse clasps her badge like a grounding stone. The administrator, for the first time, looks genuinely nervous. Judy focuses first on the nurse. Her tone is measured, but not cold. "Nurse Williams, you acted out of compassion. That much is clear. But withholding a message, a written message, carries consequences. Emotional ones, potentially legal ones." The nurse nods, accepting the weight. "I understand, Your Honor." Judy turns to the daughter next. "And you? You came into this courtroom seeking blame, but what you needed was truth. Painful truth. Truth about your mother. And truth about yourself. The daughter lowers her head. I know, she whispers. I didn't want to see what I'd done. It was easier to be angry. But anger, Judy says, is a poor substitute for accountability. The administrator shifts uncomfortably, the judge's attention now predatory as it swivels toward him. Now let's address the real concern, Judy says. The hospital's involvement. He clears his throat. Your Honor, the hospital only intended— Oh no, Judy interrupts sharply. Don't insult my intelligence. You manipulated this grieving woman into filing a lawsuit to protect your institution from scrutiny. You allowed her guilt to become your shield. The gallery murmurs. The weight of institutional deceit always strikes a nerve. The man attempts a polite tone. We were worried about liability. Judy slams her hand onto the bench. Liability? You were worried about exposure, about understaffing, about the hospital's negligence, not hers. The nurse closes her eyes, pain thick in her expression. The daughter stares at the administrator with betrayal so sharp it borders on accusation. Judy continues, voice gaining momentum. You took a woman drowning in guilt and handed her a scapegoat. You twisted facts. You cherry-picked footage. You pushed her into believing the nurse was at fault when you knew she wasn't. That is manipulation. That is exploitation. The administrator's face reddens, but he remains silent. Judy turns back to the nurse. You acted with empathy, but you chose silence where clarity may have helped. That carries weight. The nurse nods again, tears slipping freely now. I accept that. The daughter turns to her, not with accusation, but with trembling remorse. I'm sorry, she whispers, for all of it, for the lies, for the blame, for letting someone else tell me what my mother felt. The nurse reaches out just enough that their hands hover only inches apart, a silent offering of forgiveness, not yet a touch, but close. Judy lets the moment breathe, then reclaims control with quiet authority. Before I rule, she says, folding her hands, this court needs to hear one more thing, something your mother left behind that none of you have heard yet. The daughter's head snaps up. What? What do you mean? Judy nods to the bailiff. Bring me the device. A phone is carried forward, small, cracked, fragile. Judy presses play. A faint, trembling voice fills the courtroom. The mother's voice, her final voice. The courtroom is silent as the phone sits on Judge Judy's bench, an ordinary device holding the most extraordinary weight. She taps the screen, a soft beep, then a breath. A woman's voice, frail but warm, fills the room. If you're hearing this, I didn't get to say goodbye. The daughter collapses into her seat, hands over her mouth, her entire world narrowing to the fragile sound echoing through the speakers. The mother's voice continues, shaky, determined. Sweetheart, I'm sorry. I know things got messy between us. I know I pushed too hard. I didn't always know how to show love without fear getting in the way. The daughter sobs, clutching her chest as though trying to hold her heart together. The audio crackles, a long inhale, a pause that feels like the last sliver of strength a body can muster. I know you're hurting. I know you were scared to talk to me, and if I did anything to make you feel alone, please forgive me. You never were. Not to me. The nurse's eyes overflow, tears tracing silent lines down her cheeks. She presses a hand to her mouth, reliving the moment she held the woman's hand as these words were spoken. Too fragile to write. Too important to leave unspoken. The mother's voice softens further. I want you to live, really live, not buried under regret, not punishing yourself for money or mistakes or moments you wish you could undo. The daughter trembles, rocking slightly, every breath shaking through her body. And if the world feels heavy, let it. Just for a moment. Then let it go. Because I love you more than every mistake either of us ever made. A few people in the courtroom cry openly now. Even the bailiff blinks too many times in a row. The audio wavers as the mother tries to steady her breath. Promise me something. Forgive yourself. That's the only thing I want now. Then, a final whisper, gentle as falling ash. I love you, my girl. I always, always will. The recording ends. The silence afterward is crushing. The daughter folds over the desk, sobbing with a sound that is not just grief, it is surrender, not to pain, to truth. Judge Judy lets the moment breathe, her face tight with restrained emotion. She clears her throat once, a small human gesture betraying how deeply the recording struck her. She turns to the nurse. This confirms what you've been trying to say. The mother didn't fear negligence, she feared unfinished love. The nurse nods, tears still flowing. Then Judy turns to the daughter. Her voice softens into something rarely heard, an almost maternal firmness. She wasn't asking for justice against the nurse, she was asking for peace for you. The daughter lifts her face, swollen, streaked, trembling. I know, she whispers, I know now. Judy folds her hands, preparing to render her final judgment in the next section. Then there is only one question left, she says. Was the nurse's silence a mistake, or was it mercy? The entire courtroom holds one collective breath. Judy raises her gavel slowly. It's time for my ruling. Would you consider the nurse's choice compassionate or a mistake? Tell me in the comments. Judge Judy lowers her gavel but does not strike. Her eyes sweep across the courtroom, from the daughter trembling in remorse to the nurse holding her breath to the administrator shrinking beneath the weight of truth. This, she says calmly, is not a case about negligence. It's a case about humanity. A hush settles, soft but monumental. Judy's posture straightens, authority returning in full, softened only by the faint shine in her eyes. She begins with the nurse. Nurse Williams, she says, your actions were guided by compassion, experience, and the desire to prevent another person from carrying the kind of regret you've lived with. You stayed with this woman in her final moments, you comforted her, you honored her wishes. The nurse's lip trembles, gratitude and grief interlocking behind her eyes. But, Judy continues, you did withhold information, not maliciously, not recklessly, but intentionally. In my courtroom, intentions matter, but so do consequences. The nurse nods once, accepting whatever is to come. Judy shifts her gaze to the daughter, not sternly, but with a hard-earned gentleness. As for you, she says, her tone turning almost maternal, you have suffered more from your own silence than the nurse's. You were manipulated, you were grieving, but the harshest critic in your life was you. The daughter's tears fall again, but they fall differently now. Not as punishment, as release. Judy continues softly. Your mother loved you fiercely, enough to forgive you while she was dying, enough to protect you from herself, enough to leave you a message meant to carry you through the rest of your life. The daughter presses a hand to her heart, mouthing, I'm sorry to the nurse, to her mother, to herself. Judy now turns, slowly, pointedly, to the administrator. And you. The room tenses. You used a grieving woman's vulnerability to shield your institution from responsibility. You weaponized guilt, you distorted facts, you attempted to destroy the credibility of a nurse who gave everything she had to a dying patient. He swallows hard, unable to meet her eyes. Judy's voice sharpens. Your conduct is disgraceful. I am referring this matter to the appropriate oversight boards, and trust me, they will be far less patient than I am. Gasps ripple across the gallery. Then Judy returns to the heart of the case. As for the lawsuit, she says, lifting the gavel, I find no legal basis for damages. The nurse acted within reasonable emotional judgment under extraordinary circumstances. The claim is dismissed. She strikes the gavel, one clean, decisive crack that echoes like a door closing, and another opening. The daughter turns to the nurse, eyes overflowing. I'm so sorry, she whispers, voice breaking open with sincerity. And thank you for being there when I couldn't be. The nurse steps forward and, for the first time since the trial began, allows herself to embrace someone. The daughter folds into her arms, the grief between them finally finding a place to rest. Judge Judy watches with a softened expression, her voice steady as she delivers the story's final truth. Love, she says softly, is fragile, but forgiveness Forgiveness is the strongest thing we leave behind. The camera lingers as light fills the courtroom. Soft, golden, warm. Arrogance blames, fear hides, but truth heals when we let it.